Hello, everyone. As you're coming in, we're going to run a quick membership video, and we'll formally kick off the program right after that. If you could run the video.
One of the staff members at ULI Toronto came to speak at Ryerson University, and I just thought, this is a great way to network and to meet people and to learn more about my city as well, because they put on such great programming.
To me, ULI has been a crucial part of my career development. 4 years ago in Kensington Market, there was a ULI walking tour where I met a senior city planner, and we developed a strong working relationship.
That's a great thing about ULI, is the opportunity to be with like-minded people in the industry. I've personally hired people from running into them at ULI and led to a conversation, and it grew into an opportunity to join our company.
There are just so many opportunities for people of all ages to get involved as volunteers or just to attend the events and get involved.
Great about ULI is if there's that someone you've been wanting to meet and you haven't had the opportunity to do so, the roster of members is open. Take a look at who the members are. If that person's on the list, ask one of the ULI staff and they will make the introduction.
Conversations that are happening, everything from the technology side of the business and incorporating new tech into development and urban planning.
That's rare to have that kind of an entity that can convene conversations from a whole variety of perspectives so that we can kind of push and challenge each other to think a little differently about the solutions that might make a lot of sense.
Now that I've been a part of ULI for 7 years and then I volunteered for ULI, I hardly go by without going to an event and not knowing one person. And sometimes I actually find that there isn't enough time during the network portion of an event to talk to everybody that I know there.
Join ULI to connect with people in the industry, to grow your career, and to give back.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard Joy, Executive Director of ULI Toronto, and I want to welcome you to today's program, ULI Toronto, City of Brampton with Mayor Brown, Innovating, Build Back Better. As a Toronto-based regional organization, we acknowledge that the land we are meeting on virtually is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, and newcomers in this generation or generations past. We'd like to also acknowledge and honor those who've come here involuntarily, particularly those who are descendants from those brought through enslavement. To better understand the meaning behind this land acknowledgement, I recommend a program that ULI hosted with Shared Path over the past year, 13,000 years of Indigenous history in the GTA and why it matters to planning and development, and Whose Land and Whose Law. Both of these previous programs will be put into the chat for you to follow up on, and we encourage you to listen to it. Also want to acknowledge this past week, obviously some very tragic new information has been revealed related to the residential schools program. And it reminds me of a point an Indigenous leader once mentioned to me in recent years, that with respect to truth and reconciliation, there's a lot of efforts being made around reconciliation. I think we can acknowledge that, but we've got a long way to go on truth. And this past week has told us how real that statement is. So very much want to acknowledge this moment. It'll be an important one for us to build on. Before we start, I want to go through a few housekeeping items. Everybody will be automatically muted throughout the session to ensure there are no audio interferences, obviously. Closed captioning is available for this session. There may be a slight delay and it may not be 100% accurate. If you have any questions for the speakers, and we will probably have a time for one or two at the end, please use the Q&A function. And if you like a question that someone put that's not your own, vote it up and we'll make sure we'll try to get the top questions addressed. The session's being recorded and we will send it to you following the session. And if you're using social media, please tag us with @ULI Toronto or the hashtag #AskGreatQuestions. I'd also like to extend my sincere appreciation to our annual sponsors. Today's event and all of our other programming, especially during this pandemic period, would not be possible without their support. So on behalf of ULI, I'd like to thank them for that support. ULI relies on it, all of our sponsors, to keep the quality of programming like today and to help drive our mission in creating and sustaining thriving communities. So again, all of them, we say thank you. We are especially pleased to be hosting Mayor Patrick Brown today. As anybody who's been following ULI Toronto will know, Brampton is one of our most cited examples in the Greater Golden Horseshoe as a city with visionary leadership. Plug in Brampton into the ULI website search function, and you will see multiple examples of how we've showcased the city for this visionary leadership, including downtown Brampton and uptown Brampton. It's one of the few suburban cities, and I hesitate to even use the word suburban, that I've ever recalled Jane Jacobs extolling the virtues of, in fact. So without further delay, I want to bring in His Worship Patrick Brown and Regional Councillor Rowena Santos. Patrick was elected Mayor of Brampton in October 2018 on a platform of getting Brampton back on track and receiving a fair deal from our provincial and federal governments. Born in Toronto in 1978 of Irish and Italian descent, he graduated from St. Michael's School, then studied political science at the University of Toronto and graduated with a law degree from the University of Windsor. He began his practice in Brampton, where his father Edmund has practiced for more than 40 years. Patrick's mother, Judy, is a retired high school principal. Patrick has a long involvement in serving government. He was first elected in 2000 as a councillor in the city of Barrie. He served 2 terms on city council before being elected as member of parliament in that city. He was re-elected in 2008 by a landslide and in 2011 by the largest margin in the city of Barrie's history. From 2006 to 2014, Patrick was the chair of the Canada-India Parliamentary Association, and he's also served as chair of the GTA caucus from 2011 to 15. Patrick was recognized in 2013 with the Canadian Human Rights Voice Award for his role in exposing Tamil genocide. He was the first MP to talk about the Tamil genocide in the House of Commons. In May 2015, Patrick was elected as leader of the Ontario PC Party. He became a member of provincial parliament in September of that year for the riding of Simcoe North. He has served as leader of the official opposition and education critic. As mayor of Brampton, Patrick is focused on creating economic climate for investment and jobs, and doing a pretty good job of that, I might add. Patrick has added 86 new police officers to the Regional Peel Police and has actively pushed for better healthcare, transit, affordable housing, and education. In a city with a fast-growing youth and senior population, Patrick wants to expand the recreational programs and facilities so Bramptonians remain active. Mayor Brown and council have passed 2 consecutive budgets with municipal tax freezes, no small accomplishment. Patrick and his wife Genevieve live in downtown Brampton with their son Theodore. Patrick is also a best-selling author of the book Takedown, the Attempted Political Assassination of Patrick Brown, released in November 2018. And as you're going to hear, he's very much alive and well today. Moving on to our second guest, Regional Councillor Rowena Santos. Rowena is a proud Bramptonian, inspired by community and driven by passion to change the culture of politics to move the city forward. She was elected in 2018 and is the first Filipino elected to council in Brampton. She holds an HBBA degree from the Schulich School of Business and a master's in sustainable development and environmental planning from the London School of Economics. Prior to being elected, she worked at the Ontario Legislature for over a decade, most recently as director, and she mentored countless youth to be politically active across the GTA. Before politics, Rowena worked in a number of top-tier corporations, including Magna, RBC, and General Mills. She was also the program manager of the corporate citizen with Imagine Canada and executive director of Imagine, working with venture, Imagine, that's an E with an E, working with venture capitalists and entrepreneurs at the Center for Social Innovation. Rowena was raised in Brampton and is raising her sons in wards 1 and 5. And as a supporter of the arts, she's also enjoyed playing with her local band, Point of Order. Great title. She believes in living a healthy and active lifestyle, and you can see that in a YouTube. We'll have to put that link on the Riverwalk YouTube. That's fantastic. And an avid outdoor person who regularly runs and bikes in the Etobicoke Creek, as I mentioned, and works with the local YMCA and daily on the Peloton. I guess that's in the winter. I'll come back, as I said, for a couple of Q&As at the end of this program. We've got a robust a presentation and dialogue between these two great leaders from Brampton. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Mayor Brown and Councillor Santos. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Richard, for this opportunity to join all of you at ULI. And just to say, this is a real honor for us. And just to update my bio with two things. I now have two children, so I'm a household of 2 under 2 now. With Theodore, we just welcomed our daughter, Savannah. And a little tidbit that you may be interested in for those members of ULI, one of my first civic experiences, when I was at St. Mike's, as you said in my bio, I was a volunteer for Richard's father, Howard Joy, when he was a progressive municipal councillor in the city of Toronto. And I just want to say it's great to share this presentation with Councillor Santos, who has been one of the most activist councillors in Peel region and really contributes to the success of the city of Brampton. You're not going to find someone more passionate about the city's success. Today, we're going to talk about building back better in the city of Brampton. And for those of you that don't know about Brampton, we're a world-class city. We speak every language. We are the youngest big city in Canada. And if you look at Brampton, it is a mosaic of the world. Building back better is a way that we can chart our course for what lies ahead. But before we talk about building back better, I thought I should add some context over COVID, because it's been a tough year in Brampton with COVID-19. This virus hasn't been equitable or fair. It attacks densely populated urban areas differently than it does rural areas. It attacks crowded factories differently than it would from those who have the comfort of working from their home. And so it's been tough on our community. But one thing that I think COVID has shown is it's laid bare some of the socioeconomic inequalities that exist in urban Canada. And when we look about charting the course for the future, I think there must be lessons learned from some of these inequities. And you know, when I look at our efforts in Brampton, really we've tried to fill holes, fill gaps that don't, in terms of the services that are provided municipally, provincially, federally during our response. We set up task forces, social support task force, economic support task force, a youth support task, senior support task force, dealing with some of these inequities. And if I look at the challenges in the last year, whether it's paid sick days, whether it is green spaces, public green spaces, outdoor amenities, there's a layer of inequity that I don't think was as visible before. So when you have lockdowns and people are confined to their homes, what does that mean for someone that doesn't have a backyard? And when you think of a city, it really hits home the importance of protecting green spaces, of creating public amenities. When you look at the lack of paid sick days, it really, you know, shines a light on some of the inequities that exist in the social supports in an economy where you have a significant number of low-income jobs in factory settings. When you look at outdoor amenities, you know, those that have the privilege of having their own recreational amenities at home, it's very different from someone who lives in an apartment building or a crowded living condition who may not have those same amenities. And so when you talk about building a world-class city, and we talk about charting our course for the future, it really, for me, sends a message home. What are public amenities that are integral? So when you talk about Brampton's plans for active transportation, you talk about expanding recreation, it really brings that message home. When you talk about affordable housing, when you see the inequities that have existed, I think some of the most vulnerable in our community have been hit hardest by COVID-19. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today, our presentation on how we're going to build back better, how we're going to chart an exciting course for the city of Brampton. And Councillor Santos is going to take you through the next few slides.
Thanks so much, Mayor Brown, and thank you so much to all of ULI and all the participants here this afternoon. And as the mayor has just described, even though the pandemic has hit Brampton very hard, we have used that as also as an opportunity to move a few things a bit faster, and it has not slowed us down with respect to proactive investment in technology to modernize and also to improve service delivery, which has allowed for business continuity during the course of this pandemic. Particularly the Planning, Building and Economic Development Department was able to mobilize and to respond to changes brought forth by the pandemic, which has resulted in some significant improvements in customer service, especially to the public and development industry, new areas of business intelligence and analytics on development trends, and continuous improvements to streamline development approvals to support economic recovery efforts. And I know we've got a lot of planning and development folks watching, and so it's important for you to know that we have invested in this technology to keep our virtual doors open, thanks to our self-service portal called Brampton Online. And I'm going to share some statistics with you. From 2019 to 2021, site plan applications have actually increased by 100%, subdivision applications have increased 80%, and pre-consultation applications have increased 130%. In addition to shifting applications and permitting online, we were the first municipality in Ontario to introduce mobile and remote video inspections, which has increased our inspections by 16% from 2019 to 2020 and 32% increase from 2020 to date. These increases do reflect the confidence, even during a pandemic, of the building industry in Brampton and in our economy. So we have not slowed down, Mayor Brown.
Okay, well, thank you, Councillor Santos. And as Councillor Santos has said, COVID is shifting our priorities as much as we've tried to mitigate COVID and adapt, and our incredible staff at the City of Brampton have. It does shift priorities, and it starts some important conversations. And we're already hearing evidence of this from our residences and businesses. Are we ready? Are we ready to get ourselves prepared for the future and build back better? And we need to take a certain look at certain aspects of our plans. For example, do we need more green spaces for condo and apartment dwellers? Do we need to develop wider sidewalks in dining and retail districts so there is the ability to adapt and offer flexible retail and dining spaces if necessary? Do we need to make changes on how we support people's mobility around our city? Are we going to be looking to our community to help us answer? We're going to be looking to our community to help us answer those questions, and we'd love to get your input on this as well in terms of future considerations. And one thing that's not relevant necessarily to Brampton, because we've got a great IT infrastructure, but you look at this pandemic and what it's meant for reliable internet. I think there's some parts of the country where that's going to be an aspect. But as internet is changing, if you look at but the potential for 5G, as cities adapt, those public tools of communication are going to be more important than ever before. Over to you, Councillor Santos.
Thanks, Mayor Brown. And as a city, we are driving some real change and building on bold initiatives laid out in what is called the Brampton 2040 Vision document that was created in 2018. And again, during the pandemic, we have seized on many different opportunities, including bringing forward an integrated downtown plan, which is a key piece of that vision and is guided by inclusivity, innovation, as well as sustainability. The plan is a roadmap for transformational action with key infrastructure upgrades, urban design, land use, and program interventions, building on the center's character as an economic driver, regional cultural hub, and an emerging innovation district. And I think that emerging out of this pandemic, our small businesses in particular need this breath of fresh air, and this integrated plan along with many short-term elements are going to provide some of that support. As of 2021, Council approved $275 million in continued investments and projects for downtown Brampton, with $80 million already spent. And for the 2018 to 2022 term of council is advocating for change and helping to secure our city's future by making it a priority to unlock downtown Brampton's potential. This includes improving livability and prosperity by ensuring local employment opportunities, neighborhood services, as well as programs, quality public spaces, and coordinating a full range of active capital projects. The Start to Unlock Downtown Brampton is a plan to facilitate collaboration between the city and the developer community, stakeholders, and also the public to find creative and alternative approaches for reoccupation and redevelopment, and particularly along Main Street and the Heritage Theatre block. This will support downtown Brampton's economic and cultural revival. When we say build back better, this does not just include buildings. We also have to take into account sustainability and our environment. And that's certainly the direction and the trend that everybody is emerging from. As a key city initiative contributing to the redevelopment and beautification of the downtown is Riverwalk. It will establish incredible public spaces for people to enjoy and provide long-term flood mitigation. All of these efforts will allow for more residential development, create more jobs, and strengthen the character and identity of our downtown core. More than $45 million has been committed to the Riverwalk project by partners from all levels of government to complete this transformation. And now I want to bring Mayor Brown back to discuss another key aspect of the integrated downtown plan, which has to do with the Innovation District.
Well, that's right, Councillor Santos. We have exciting plans to build an innovation district in downtown Brampton. And we really feel that we are well positioned for this. If you look at the innovation corridor in Canada, as identified by the government of Canada, it's from that Toronto to Waterloo corridor. And in that corridor, there are 5,200 startups, 15,000 tech companies, and there is an opportunity to create a real synergy in that corridor of technology. And to encourage this, the city of Brampton is investing $21 million to build an innovation district. Located in the heart of our downtown, it will act as an ecosystem for innovation and entrepreneurship. So at every stage of a startup's journey, we're going to have supports there to help accelerate, grow, and bring to the market emerging tech companies. And the latest one that we've just added, I'm excited about this, is Beehive. So for those of you who have seen Velocity or the DMZ, it's similar. And we're doing it in partnership with the Toronto Business Development Center. And the inspiration for it was I was on an FDI mission in Hyderabad, India, and I saw their startup hub. It was called T-Hub. And it was just a bee of activity where there was startups that were growing into world-class companies in India from this tech sector, this innovation district in Hyderabad, India. And we worked with the government of Canada with a startup visa program, and we built our own Beehive. So Beehive will be the soft landing spot for international startups. So, and for those who've got a successful company that's ready to grow, enter the North American market, it's going to be happening in downtown Brampton. This year, we're welcoming 20 tech companies, 20 startups, but over the next 2 years, in collaboration with the startup visa program and the government of Canada, we're expecting 200 startups to be located in Beehive in downtown Brampton. So it's going to be incredible. It's an ecosystem I'm really enthusiastic about, and I can't wait to see it grow. I want to see investment in downtown Brampton internationally that is going to, frankly, have spin-off for all our surrounding businesses. Over to you again, Councillor Santos.
Thanks so much, Mayor. And we are buzzing with activity in the downtown core, but we also have plans, new plans to develop an uptown. In Brampton 2040's vision, There is a development of a new urban district with full provisions for comfortable and sustainable living, the Queen Street East Precinct. We are encouraging private investments in the downtown. We are encouraging private investments in Uptown to transform it into a modern 20-minute walkable neighborhood with connected transit, social and educational amenities, natural assets, and purpose-built public spaces. It will reflect the mosaic of Brampton through features like public art, expressive architecture, and the incorporation of the latest trends in green city building. To help us build back better, the Queen Street East Precinct, we are developing a comprehensive community development framework with a roadmap for implementation through the community permit planning system to ensure we deliver a vibrant and cohesive neighborhood. It is an exciting plan happening in the Uptown.
Thank you, Councillor Santos.
Oh, and now is a Brown. He left. He's come back.
Now, as a world-class, future-ready city, when we build back better, it is crucial to envision what factors will drive the choices to call Brampton home and for their family and other businesses. What will be Brampton's compelling new narrative for today, but also for tomorrow? How can we reveal a sense of community? How can you build those qualities and become stronger each day as a community? One aspect that is particularly important is in the post-pandemic reality is healthcare, and our council has been aggressive on this issue. Even before the pandemic happened, we declared a healthcare emergency. We felt there was an inequity in terms of healthcare dollars in Ontario. The provincial average for hospital beds per 1,000 residents was 2.16, and in Brampton it was only 0.96. So we ran a fair deal for healthcare, saying that we needed a new hospital. We were tired, government after government of every partisan stripe had let down our community. If you looked at healthcare investments, frankly, they hadn't been in parts of the country that is growing the fastest, the most diverse. And as much as we say in Canada we have universal healthcare, there was a different standard. If you go to a more established, older community like Oakville or Kingston, there was one standard of care, and you go to a growing community like Brampton or Scarborough, there's a different standard of care. So there was two-tier when it came to healthcare. And we put together the largest petition in the city history, and we made traction. Maybe they're just sick of hearing from us, but we made traction. In this last provincial budget, they committed to build a new hospital on the old decommissioned Peel Memorial site. It's already on the Infrastructure Ontario site as an active tender for up to $1 billion, making it the largest healthcare project in the province of Ontario at this moment. So we were pretty excited about that. There's going to be 24/7 emergency care, 250 new beds. It's going to make a difference. Is it going to solve all our healthcare woes? No, but it's going to be a huge step in the right direction. And I think in this post-pandemic world, having reliable, accessible healthcare is something that's important. You know, certainly during the pandemic, we saw our hospital stretch beyond capacity. We were at 100% before the first COVID patient arrived. Think about that, 100% before the first COVID patient arrived. So this hospital build is going to be wonderful for our community. And they even, in the provincial budget, made a commitment to build a med school in our community, which is another step in the right direction, although we do want to see our own university in Brampton that I know Councillor Santos is passionate about. Brampton is one of Canada's fastest growing and youngest cities, and we want to make sure that we have students for the jobs of tomorrow, students for the high-skilled jobs of tomorrow. And it's why this vision of a Brampton University and enhanced local post-secondary options is so critical to building a vibrant community. And that's why we started the Brampton U movement and our advocacy. And just like we did with the hospital, we're not going to give up until we get a commitment for a Brampton University from the provincial government. And we have received positive feedback from our advocacy efforts. This includes 3 green papers on key elements of governance, academic, and economic strategies. But we do have to do a bit more pushing on that one. But with the passion of individuals in our community for having those key services. I know at some point the province is going to agree with us.
Absolutely, and when we have, we're addressing healthcare, we're addressing post-secondary, we have one of the youngest, most diverse populations in the country. And you know what? We need to keep everyone healthy as well, which is why we have a very ambitious plan for active transportation throughout the city of Brampton. And we are moving from a suburban sprawling driving culture to one that is supportive of more active transportation lifestyles, including transit as well. We are developing an integrated, attractive, and accessible system of sidewalks, cycling facilities, as well as trails. And research and best practices from around the world show that investments in active transportation increases local economic activity, quality of life, health of residents, while also decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. Brampton residents will enjoy safe and also convenient access to places, goods, and services using active modes of transportation. Adding bicycle infrastructure in the city of Brampton is about building streets for people, streets for people, streets for people, and not just cars, which is a transformational shift in a suburban city like Brampton. Streets for People is about providing a safe and comfortable street experience, regardless of how someone chooses to travel on it. It is where a place on the street is identified not just by mobility, but a wide array of activities. And Streets for People should include a people-friendly dimension, including safety, trees, local culture, pleasant ambience, multiple uses, and environmental features. The 2020 Active Transportation Implementation Program included 19.7 kilometers of linear cycling infrastructure. That's bike lanes, urban shoulders, multi-use paths, and also recreational trails and paths. And it's building on the success of last year. This year, the city is implementing close to 30 kilometers of additional linear cycling infrastructure for 2021. Active transportation is a great example of something that supports the health and well-being of our community as a whole, including the environment. And of course, there are many other environmental factors involved, including creating a community where people want to spend time and money, for that matter. As a city, Brampton has a blueprint for improving environmental sustainability. Council endorsed targets that work to establish a clear pathway to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and that begins with a 30% emissions reduction goal by 2030, intensifying to reduction by 80% in 2050. Pretty aggressive. We know that this is possible if together we focus on green communities, efficiencies in home and building and transportation, as well as local energy supply, industrial efficiency, green infrastructure, and grassroots community engagement and collaboration. We already have some amazing projects underway. For example, we are establishing a standardized home retrofit program, which is not only for Brampton, but across the region of Peel, which will support our residents in making their homes far more efficient. Building back better also means enhancing and maintaining our green infrastructure, such as our environment's natural systems and processes. We made this a priority through our Brampton 2040 vision, and we have since acted by developing our Brampton Eco Parks strategy. This strategy supports efforts like renaturalizing cement channels, designing an environmental education center, long-term flood mitigation, and open space revitalization. We are also taking care of our existing natural systems and have embarked as a whole community on a goal to plant 1 million trees by 2040 in order to grow our city's urban forest. That's 50,000 trees a year for the next 20 years. And Brampton residents love our trees. The city is increasing tree plantings all along our streets as well as in our parks, and we have enhanced tree planting requirements for new developments and established a Valley Land and Parks Naturalization Program. Building back better is certainly about the environment in Brampton.
Well, thank you, Councillor Santos. And you're absolutely correct about the green initiatives that are underway in Brampton. And from active transportation to planting 1 million trees. This is integral to the type of community we want to build. And when I talk about the environment, I think of one of our most famous residents, former Premier Bill Davis. When he was Premier, he actually created the Ministry of the Environment. It didn't exist in Ontario before his time. He still lives on Main Street in downtown Brampton, and always reminds me that taking care of the environment is one of our obligations as government. We want to make sure we pass on the same beautiful environment to the next generation. And so our council takes this seriously. We passed a motion and a plan to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 by 80%, being one of the more aggressive communities in Canada when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions and our commitment to climate change. And that can't be achieved if we don't change transit. And so for those that are going to be cycling, that's one component of a greener transit plan, but we have to change our city transit too. And that change and transition is happening as we speak. Brampton is home to the largest deployment pilot project in Canada, battery operated buses. And the first battery operated buses have already started running on 2 of our routes, 8 new buses. And this technology actually charges when they're picking up passengers. It's a partnership with the Government of Canada through the Infrastructure Minister, Catherine McKenna, and it will dramatically change the emissions that come from transit. But we also understand that we need to create world-class public transit. As they say with Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. That's the case with active transportation, and that's the case with public transportation. And so whether it's rapid bus transit on Queen Street, building our new electrified transit facility, creating more accessible transit, we are pushing that dial in Brampton. We even passed a motion as part of our 2040 vision that we one day want to have transit that is free. We passed a motion that next year we're going to phase in free transit for seniors as the first step, but it's going to grow. So when you think of public goods like parks and healthcare, we're thinking big picture down the road, that transit is one of those public goods. So green, accessible public transit, we're making progress in Brampton. Over to you again, Councillor Santos.
Thanks, Mayor. And, I think one of the most amazing stories about the city of Brampton, particularly under your leadership in this term, is that we really are, through 2040 vision, with our staff, with our community, we really are transforming our city from a suburban sprawling community to one that is vibrant, diverse, and buzzing with energy, one that is, awarding us, the Maclean's magazine has awarded us the 13th best community in Canada in 2021. And last year, we were at 199th. So we jumped from 199th to 13th place. And so it's very clear that folks are starting to notice this transformational change in the city of Brampton. And part of that change as well is about arts and culture, and the arts and culture scene that is a critical element in terms of building a vibrant and livable city that is also competitive and attracting residents to come here in the city, as well as business investment. And it's also fundamental to rebuilding a robust local economy. In partnership with the newly launched Arts, Culture, and Creative Industry Development Agency, of which I'm a member, the city will help define Brampton as a thought leader through creative placemaking, unique support programs, and innovative use of space for artists in the city. For example, Brampton Civic Centre has been identified for adaptive use to facilitate arts and creative users as a multidisciplinary arts hub. City Council is also putting an emphasis on tourism, endorsing Brampton's first ever tourism strategy in April this year. And given that Brampton is so rich in diversity, one of our strengths is actually culinary arts. We take tremendous pride in the many flavors that Brampton has to offer. The city of Brampton truly is a mosaic, and our arts and culture and tourism opportunities really do reflect who we are. You're on mute, Mary Brown.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. There is something amazing happening in the art scene in Brampton. A lot of people don't know, but we just keep on producing world-class talent. You look at poet Rupi Kaur, you look at a singer, Alessia Cara, comedian Russell Peters. The list goes on and on of talent that has been raised in Brampton. And so stay tuned to see more as Brampton contributes to the arts worldwide. I know we are coming to the conclusion of our slide presentation, and I hope you can see that Brampton is a city of opportunities. We have a strong, determined vision for the future. Brampton has worked hard to keep development moving forward during the pandemic. Now, Brampton needs help from developers and other industry professionals to build back better, to achieve the innovative, low-carbon future we envision.
Well, thank you, Mayor Patrick Brown and Councillor Santos. For the audience, I hope probably many of you are familiar with this story, but many of you that might have been the first time hearing it. And let me just say, as a third-party validator to the Brampton story, it is as good as it sounds. It is truly the visionary leadership in Brampton is something that extends and is recognized beyond the Toronto region, the GTHA, the Greater Golden Horseshoe. In fact, as an international organization, the UL Urban Land Institute, ULI, we've had panels coming up to intersect with such things as the Riverwalk and the downtown connection to the Riverwalk, an unbelievable jewel. And they couldn't. It was like they needed a new literacy around what quote unquote suburban municipalities might aspire to be. It took them a long time to process what you're doing and what you're accomplishing and what you're aspiring to. One of my questions personally, and I will get to the audience questions, and I'll encourage our audience to submit some more questions because we now have a good 18 minutes, a unique opportunity. But one of the things that's really impressed us at the Urban Land Institute is how coordinated Brampton is. Most municipalities, sad to say, suffer from a lot of siloism. And when you're talking about something that might be planning and development, they'll say, well, there's only so many departments that need to be involved in that. But as we did a workshop in the Uptown Brampton, this is the terminus of the Hurontario LRT, which we hope and you hope will be extended, maybe speak to that, up to the center of the city. So the Huron, Ontario, and Steeles Avenue, I guess, is the terminus. The visioning around that incredible precinct has brought every department, including the regional, the regional appeal, including the provincial agencies. It's a mastery of coordination, and I think unparalleled, frankly, in this region. And I'm wondering if you could maybe comment on how have you done that, and what could others learn from your approach there?
Well, I think one thing that's helped that coordination is having a long-term plan for your city. And normally, cities plan on 4-year cycles. There's an election cycle every 4 years, and there doesn't tend to be long-term planning that is coordinated. And the Brampton 2040 plan is that long-term plan where we've said, this is where we want to be in 2040 and what are the progress points we need to make to get there. But it's also getting departments to talk to each other. And that's not easy because you're right, the tendency is departments are in silos, and what complicates it is we have regional government in Peel region as well. And so that is not without challenges. I can attest to that just last week when we were trying to coordinate our downtown reimagine work. But we do try to make sure that we have departments talking to departments and other levels of government talking to other levels of government.
Yeah, and I think I'll add as well that it is also a matter of leadership on Team Brampton. Like the mayor has shared that we are all singing from the same songbook when it comes to Vision 2040, but we do have a leadership team at the table who believes in the vision and is working together to push that forward as much as possible. The only other thing that I will add, which is very special that I've observed, is the collaboration and the collaborative approach that we are taking with community members and community engagement. When you hear from the residents who are also employees at the City of Brampton, when you hear from them that they would like to see things happen, there seems to be more of a spirit of cooperation. And again, sort of one direction that people understand to go into.
Well, I hope you recognize, and you're probably too modest to do that truly what you're doing with respect to coordination is the best practice I've ever seen. So congratulations on that. Okay, into some questions here. And of course, they go from the broad to the nuance. So we'll start with the nuance. Here's one, anonymous question. In order to help change behavior and ride your bike more often, are you planning on offering bikes that you can use via your Visa card, similar to Toronto? Not everybody owns a bike nor can afford to. So is bike share type program on the horizon in your city?
I could chime in on that one.
Yes.
Why am I not surprised?
Councillor Santos, why don't you start?
Yeah, and the mayor was starting off. Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we are considering. But as I was sharing earlier, that collaborative spirit with the community already has a type of bike share library available in the city of Brampton through a community organization called Bike Brampton. And they actually were the ones who helped us and played an important role in our active transportation network. They already have a service and a bike library for the community in order to sign out and bike loan various bikes if they don't have access to one. And certainly the sales of bikes during the pandemic, everything is sold out. It's so hard to get a bike these days. But I think in the future we will be definitely, it's in the active transportation master plan to be looking at bike share programs.
What
and
is the name of the program?
tested out an e-bike. I tested out an e-bike recently.
Awesome. What is the name of the program you just mentioned? And we'll look it up and put it in the chat for people to follow. You said the bike library, what was it called?
Yeah, so it's with Bike Brampton. It's called and it's a bike hub. And they provide loaning of bikes as well as teaching folks how to service their own bikes.
If we can find that on the net, we'll plug it into the chat box. Mayor Brown, I think you were going to offer some comments.
I would just say that I think having bikes that are accessible, especially at a time when bikes are sold out, that's an important element to active transportation. So we're looking at what the best options available are. I would say that this council's focus on active transportation has been met with NIMBYism, where there's people who are okay with the idea of bike lanes, just not in their neighborhood. And so we have had some growing pains of confronting that, but I think it takes the political will to say, big picture down the road, we want a healthier, greener community, and we're going to have to ruffle some feathers to build that active transportation map.
Good to hear. All right, I'm going to move on to another question here around affordable home ownership. What are some of your ideas on helping our younger residents in becoming home owners? At this time, their only hope in owning their home is to move out of the city. When people say that about Toronto, they're obviously now saying that about Brampton, or maybe you have some thoughts on that.
So we are plagued in Brampton with the same type of housing appreciation that you're seeing throughout the GTA. I think we had a 30% year-over-year increase. That's not sustainable. It's inconsistent with the rise in wages and inflation. But the reality is, I think it would be misleading to suggest a municipality is going to be able to change housing prices. What we can do is create a larger array of housing options, and so entry points into the housing market. And so what we're trying to do in Brampton is not everything needs to be a traditional single family house, that there can be an array of housing options that gets that person, that gets that family, that gets that young person into the market for the first time.
Yeah, and I'll add that our amazing planning team at the City of Brampton We are working on a housing master plan with a priority on affordable housing and creating those different ranges of housing options. We're also working with the region of Peel to develop some incentives for developers to actually develop more affordable housing units beyond just being single detached homes.
Perfect. Well, then that was a question just came in around rental housing, and I assume that is that included in that, Councillor Santos?
Yeah, absolutely. It's included in that as well, for sure.
Great. Next questions. We only have two lined up here, so bring them on. Arjun Sohata is asking Mayor Brown, can you highlight the province's commitment on receiving a medical school? Has this commitment been confirmed? What's the status? I think you made reference to it earlier in your remarks.
Yeah, so it's exciting in the sense that med schools are not announced very often. It seems to be every 20 or 30 years in Ontario.
Right.
So they included this in the most recent budget document that they're going to be doing. They're exploring building a med school in partnership with Ryerson University, where they've given them a grant to come back with the feasibility of building it. So Ryerson, under the leadership of Mohammed Lashmi, are well underway working with our city staff, and we believe, I know Mohammed believes this is a project that we could be breaking ground on not 10 years from now or 5 years from now, but within the next few years.
Fantastic to hear that. Okay, the last question I have up, oh, one more came in, great. Around the LRT, I maybe teased out this question when I mentioned the LRT terminating at Steeles, and under your leadership, I know council has expressed a desire to see that connection right into the GO station. Could you update us on where that sits?
Yeah, so we're trying to bring a community to get together. For those that don't know the history in Brampton, under the previous term of council, the city actually turned down provincial funding because they couldn't get an alignment that folks agreed on. And it was, you never hear of a city turning funding down. And so one of our goals of this council was, everyone knows we want world-class transit. What can we do to bring people on the same page? And there was those in the downtown that didn't want a surface LRT in a heritage area with smaller streets. And there was those that said, if you don't connect to the downtown, you're not building a proper transit system. And we came up with a compromise proposal where the heritage portion of the LRT that goes right to the downtown, that final leg would be tunneled. Now, we've got some work to do to get funding partners from either the provincial or federal government for that project, but it's important to create a plan. It's important to create a vision. Right now, we're finishing off those EAs for that new route. But I would say, if you look at the per capita funding allocations for transit infrastructure to Hamilton, to Scarborough, to Vaughan, to Kitchener-Waterloo, it is all less than what would be required to have this phase 2 of the LRT.
What about beyond the downtown, going further north? The same question wanted to inquire. Is there anything?
Well, I would say it's going to be a big step
right.
to get to the downtown, and we're going to lobby like crazy to make it happen. But once that's realized, of course, you'd want to expand beyond. I think a world-class transit system connects the entire city. And whether you go east or west or further north, I think once we get to the downtown, then you can start have conversations down the road of where that next expansion goes. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Right.
We still have a lot of work to do to get it to the downtown.
For sure.
Okay,
and you know, the LRT is already coming to the uptown. I spoke about it earlier in the presentation. Mm-hmm. LRT is already going to the uptown area in 2024 to the Shoppers World site. So there's a big opportunity to leverage some private investment there as well.
Absolutely. And that vision is outstanding, I must say. There's a number of questions around arts, culture, and entertainment, but I did have one more transit-related question I'll squeeze in here. It was asked how Brampton Transit might better integrate with Mississauga Go York Region on fares and so forth. Anything you want to speak to on that front?
Yeah, so this is an ongoing conversation with all the transit agencies. We recognize that we are very interconnected. In the GTA, workplaces, families, friends, that's all interconnected. I think with COVID, we've seen that in particular, that if you lock down one area, open up another, it didn't work. And so we are interconnected, and transit needs to be more interconnected. I know there's some collaboration right now happening with the city of Vaughan and the city of Mississauga in terms of workplaces. We already have that collaboration with Caledon, but in terms of fare integration and transit integration, I think that's an ongoing goal.
Right, and also, requiring some moves from on high too. It can't be driven at the local transit agency level alone. Okay, over to performing arts and arts culture. There's a couple of questions. One person says something which I'm sure you'll take objection to. What are your plans to keep some of our younger residents entertained in Brampton versus heading into Toronto, concerts, dining, embracing the city culture? I've heard them say there's nothing to do in Brampton. Another questioner asked about performing arts, any commitments for additional funding. Well, I know Brampton's got some great cultural attractions on all fronts, but take it away.
So in terms of like a nightclub scene, there may not be a traditional nightclub scene in Brampton for young people, but there is an incredible array of culinary talent, of restaurants, of entertainment establishments, and things to do. And whether it's parks or public squares like Garden Square, you just look at the Raptors run and the way people gathered at Garden Square. It shows you what's possible. If you look at our Canada Day celebrations at Shinkuzi Park, it's tough to find a bigger celebration of people all together. So I do think there's a lot to do, and there's lots to do in arts and culture. Maybe Councillor Santos wants to expand upon that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm being an artist, a little bit of an artist, self-proclaimed artist myself, I'm always hungry to see what the local art scene and culture scene is in Brampton. Certainly, COVID-19 has made it very difficult for many artists and to actually have events. But I will share that every single weekend during normal circumstances, we have events happening all over the place. And downtown Brampton is going to have our farmers market in the summer. In addition to that, our integrated downtown plan also includes an arts and culture perspective as well. The Rose Theatre is in downtown Brampton. And finally, I will add that it's the first time that the city of Brampton is putting together a tourism strategy. And a key component of that tourism strategy is performing arts and creating more entertainment. And as the mayor had said, highlighting many of the culinary arts and flavors of Brampton, if you will. Finally, I'll add that with all of the activity related to post-secondary institutions, we will see more investments in that regard with respect to entertainment and various venues, and just naturally, organically attract the sort of arts and culture and entertainment sector as a whole.
Fantastic.
And I would say,
yeah, go ahead.
I would say, somewhat related to arts and culture, we're seeing a really growing production industry in Brampton too. It's really exciting to see some of the movie productions and TV productions that are happening in our city. You know, I visited a set of Handmaid's Tale, and they were doing that in Brampton. And you think some of these world-class television shows, and that one, you know, obviously inspired from a Canadian novelist. It's neat to see that happening in our city.
Well, it is indeed, and we're running out of time, unfortunately. But I would just say, to cap off your last comments, for anybody who has not been into Brampton recently, take the GO train to Brampton City Centre, downtown Brampton, and bring your bike and check it out. It is super exciting. It's a lovely, lovely center of a really wonderful city, and it's just been a great pleasure to have both Councillor Santos and Mayor Brown take time to meet with us today. So I want to thank you both. I also want to thank our guests who joined us for today's session, well attended. And a couple things. First of all, I want to invite you to get involved in ULI. We're at a moment in the year where we have intake for volunteerism for our various committees. So please do take the opportunity to check out our volunteer opportunities and get more involved. As the city and the region opens up, this might be a really great opportunity to just get deeper involved with ULI. And I also want to point you to our events upcoming slides. We've got a lot of events still ahead of us through to the summer, including the famed Indigenous architect Douglas Cardinal. We've got a focus on prop tech later this Friday. So these are both coming this week. Students, if you're a student and you're wanting to become a member of ULI, a very generous offer is being extended your way, courtesy of a donation being made by two of our past co-chairs who are literally going to buy your membership for a year if you show up to this program on June the 7th. And more programs ahead, like should the City of Toronto or other cities for that matter have a city architect, you won't want to miss that. So with that, I'm going to say it's 1:01. I went over time. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you very soon. All the best. Bye-bye.